They said it was about streamlining, just a necessary adjustment. The email read cold font, warm spin. But let's be honest, you don't cut someone after 19 years to save money. You do it because you think they won't fight back. You do it because you think no one will notice they're gone. I didn't yell, I didn't beg, I didn't even raise an eyebrow. I just stepped out of that glass office heels, echoing on polished tile, and started counting. Not the days until I left. The seconds until everything they built without me began to fall apart. You're no longer essential to our growth trajectory. That was how Derek Harlan, the new CEO, opened our first and only one-on-one. Not good morning, not nice to meet you. Just a surgical statement delivered over the rim of a branded coffee mug. I sat across from him, spine-straight, notepad untouched. He continued, eyes never quite landing on mine. We're streamlining leadership layers, making space for more agile roles. Frankly, you've been here a long time, Evelyn. And with legacy salaries, it's becoming hard to justify certain figures. I had worked at Weston and Maddox for 19 years. I knew every corridor, every corner where a system lived or died. My title was Vice President of People and Culture, but that barely touched what I actually did. He clicked open a spreadsheet. Starting next cycle, you'll see a salary correction. 30% down. It's not personal. No, I wanted to say, it's worse than personal. It's the kind of erasure you reserve for old files, for redundant folders, not for people. I could have protested, laid out numbers, turnover trends, the DEI programs that kept us out of lawsuits, the mentoring chain that quietly built our bench. But I didn't. I smiled. Understood. And as I stood up, heels soft against his polished floor, I realized I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was awake. Because in that moment, he had given me the most precious gift of all. He'd stopped seeing me. And people who stop looking don't notice what's being quietly dismantled right behind them. I stepped out of his glass office into the hallway, calm, composed. One step, then another, the silence behind me a closing curtain. In my chest, a quiet pulse began. Tick, tick, tick. He thought he'd clipped a name off a payroll sheet. What he'd actually done was start a countdown. At Weston and Maddox, people used to call me the hinge. Not the spotlight, not the engine. The hinge. The piece that doesn't move much but holds everything that does. I started in employee relations when HR still meant holiday forms and open enrollment brochures. Over the next 19 years, I rewrote our grievance policy, guided us through 2 acquisitions, and built the company's first scalable leadership pipeline. My name rarely showed up in press releases, but when the tech division imploded in 2011, it was my team who kept the talent from walking. When our benefits provider collapsed overnight in 2016, it was my early morning call to Glenridge Medical that salvaged continuity. They remembered that call. Apparently, Derek never asked about it. I mentored 9 department leads who are now VPs elsewhere. I trained my own replacement twice without being asked. I held the line during transitions, lawsuits, budget crises, and CEO changes. Derek Harlan was the 4th. What he didn't understand, what men like him never do, is that quiet leadership isn't accidental. It's strategic. It's how you stay standing when the wind changes. Derek walked in at 36 with a grin and a slide deck. Tech world bred, pitch trained, and fluent in startup speak. Velocity, disruptive alignment, cost to impact pivoting. I watched him rename entire departments within his first month, as if language alone could remake a culture. He thought culture was a tone you set in memos. I knew it was the thing that bled through after 5 rounds of layoffs. He replaced half the boardroom chairs with new faces, who nodded harder than they questioned. And with every email that landed in staff inboxes, cold-clipped, self-congratulatory, I saw morale tighten like a storm cloud. But no one said anything. Not yet. They always forget the people who stay late, smooth the edges, hold the trust. He called me a cost center. What he forgot is that I built the center. I designed the payroll matrix he was now weaponizing. I set up the offboarding flow he'd use to quietly phase me out. I trained the staff who could still see me in the margins, even if he couldn't. And so I smiled day after day as I watched him repurpose the house I helped raise, oblivious to the fact that the beams still bore my name. People like Derek think infrastructure is invisible until it starts vanishing. And by the time they notice the missing pieces, they never realize who took them. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. First came the calendar change. My recurring leadership syncs disappeared without comment. No cancellation notice, no agenda shift, just gone. I checked with my assistant, she hadn't removed them. Maybe they're restructuring how strategy flows, she guessed, avoiding eye contact. Right, restructuring. A word that always means the decision's been made, but no one wants to say it out loud. Next came the desk. I returned from a lunch meeting to find my office door ajar. Inside sat a younger woman, early 30s, sleek ponytail pastel blouse, already unpacking her laptop and aligning pens on my desk like it had always been hers. Sorry, I began, stepping in. This was my space. She looked up, all perfect teeth, and practiced calm. Oh, didn't they tell you I'm assisting Derek directly now? He asked that I be seated closer to his side of the floor. There was no malice in her voice. That made it worse. I gathered my things, slowly, deliberately, a photo frame. A mug that read, "People first," isn't radical, it's sustainable. A stack of journals I'd once used to design compensation models that actually worked. No one came to help. No one said a word. I wheeled my box 2 corridors over past the executive suite, past the glass walls until I found a desk, wedged beside the IT printer bay, where the lights flickered and the floor shook every time someone used the copier. A small brass plaque still labeled it as floating workspace. How fitting. I sat down. The next week I lost my admin access to certain systems, no warning. The interface still let me log in, but I could no longer approve contract renewals or flag discrepancies in performance reviews. It was like watching your reflection fade from a mirror you stood directly in front of. Meanwhile, the new assistant, her name was Paige, shadowed me. Just here to observe, she chirped, following my steps a little too closely. She asked a few questions, made a few notes, but mostly she watched. She took screenshots of files she didn't understand, forwarded emails to herself from shared inboxes, and asked for explainers on legal codes I'd personally authored. When she didn't get immediate answers, she'd smile and say things like, "It's okay, Derek says we'll automate all this anyway." At one point, she referred to me as Evie in front of the interns. I didn't correct her. I wasn't angry. I was learning. Because while she was watching me, I was watching her. Watching Derek. Watching the slow unraveling they hadn't even noticed yet. Paige didn't know where our documentation lived. She thought the onboarding flowchart was the onboarding system. She didn't realize that the compliance calendar needed quarterly manual triggers, or that our employee review templates were hard-coded by department archetype. She didn't understand why 2 people's titles being out of sync in the HRIS system could cost us a federal audit. And Derek, he didn't care. He was pitching culture decks to clients, sending LinkedIn posts about the next generation of workplace dynamism, while ignoring every smoke alarm blinking behind him. There was a Thursday when he walked past me, earbuds in, didn't even pause. Paige followed behind him like a satellite tablet in hand. "Evelyn, could you forward me that termination release template? We want to move quickly on 2 roles. Roles, not people. 2 roles." I nodded, emailed it, and began making backups. By that Friday, I was staying 45 minutes late each evening. Not to work overtime, no one wanted my labor. I stayed to review access logs, to quietly duplicate policy archives into an external legal drive under my name, to cross-reference timestamps and permission changes. No one asked, no one looked. They didn't think I was dangerous. They thought I was done, and that was their first real mistake. Because while they were busy pruning the tree, I was counting its roots. And some of those roots ran deep, straight into the core system's workflows and client contracts they now use to power every streamlined announcement. Derek had called me expendable. He didn't understand that when you erase the foundation, the whole house remembers. There's a myth about systems, that once built, they run themselves. But I knew better. Systems don't run, they're maintained, nurtured, protected, often by someone no one remembers when the lights stay on and nothing crashes. Someone like me. So when Derek and his team stopped looking in my direction, I did what I had always done, I maintained. Just not for them this time. I began each day 15 minutes early, arriving with a coffee and a smile. No one questioned. I stayed later than anyone noticed, answering low-level HR help desk tickets, while quietly building a secondary architecture under the floorboards of the existing one. A parallel skeleton, subtle, legal, and time-triggered. The foundation, a dormant protocol I'd written years ago in response to a possible merger crisis. A fail-safe escalation script designed to lock administrator-level access unless reauthorized through dual authentication, one of which I still held. Originally meant for disaster recovery, now repurposed for another kind of catastrophe arrogance. I copied critical policy archives to a personal encrypted drive. I mapped metadata logs, carefully removing traces of my recent backups. I scrubbed file version histories to make it look like everything was untouched. I even changed the access alerts to redirect to a legacy security inbox no one checked anymore. At night, I went home and wrote out scenarios, risk trees, contingency layers. There wasn't rage in it, no fire, no fury, just cold clarity. But even clarity comes with its own risks. One Wednesday evening, Paige stayed late. I hadn't expected her. I was in the back corner of the server room, finalizing the last sequence of administrator key switches, when the motion-sensitive lights flicked on. I froze. Footsteps. I quickly closed my terminal and stepped out like I had simply come to check a ticket. "Oh, Evie," Paige said, startled. "Didn't think anyone else was still here." Her voice was casual, but I could see her eyes glance at the screen behind me, still faintly lit from standby. I smiled, calm. Printer queue jammed again. I was looking into it. "Didn't want to bug it." She nodded, unconvinced but disinterested. "Cool. Derek says we're going to outsource all this back-end junk soon anyway." That was her tell junk. She didn't understand the difference between the cables that carried people's salaries and the ones that powered the coffee machine. As she walked off, I watched her go, and only then let the breath leave my chest. That was close. But close was a reminder my window was narrowing. They weren't stupid, just arrogant. And arrogance makes people lazy, but not blind forever. That night, I initiated the full countdown. 48 hours. I pinged Monica, my old IT partner, who now consulted for a firm in Boston. We'd kept in touch, a monthly call, occasional memes. I asked her if she still had admin clearance for Weston's legacy systems. She paused. "You sure you want me involved? I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," I said. "Just make sure the right people aren't blamed when things start blinking red." She didn't ask more. Just said, "Copy. I'll ghost you from the logs." Meanwhile, I drafted a single memo. Effective immediately, I withdraw all operational authority and liability from all systems, processes, and infrastructure built or modified under my direction at Weston and Maddox. Access privileges granted under my name are revoked unless renewed by mutual written agreement. Evelyn Ross. It was clean, cold, legal. I scheduled it to send in 3 days. Then I sat back in my flickering workspace, beside the copier, took a sip of lukewarm coffee, and watched the countdown begin. I didn't need anyone to see what I was doing. That was the point. Derek thought I was gone. Paige thought I was fading. Everyone else thought I was harmless, but I wasn't disappearing. I was deleting myself on my terms. The rain came sideways that Tuesday morning. Sheets of water lashed the glass facade of Weston and Maddox like nature itself was trying to scrape something clean. My calendar simply read, "All staff sync, mandatory attendance, no agenda, no sender name, just the unmistakable scent of corporate theater." I took my time walking to the conference room. There were already people inside, some standing, others whispering. The energy was tight, brittle. I recognized it from previous regime changes. This wasn't an update. It was a curtain call. Derek stood at the front, sleeves rolled, that same too-wide smile stretching across his face like confidence could be manufactured on cue. Paige flanked him, holding a tablet like she was guarding a state secret. "Thanks for being here," Derek began, voice crisp, practiced. "We've been doing some top-down evaluations to ensure operational alignment with our forward vision." Buzzwords. Always the buzzwords. In that process, he continued, we've identified some functions that no longer reflect where we're heading as a company. Roles that, while once integral, now create redundancy in our leaner framework. He looked at me, brief, sharp, like a paper cut. This will be Evelyn Ross's final week with us. We thank her for her years of service and wish her the best in future endeavors. No handshake. No mention of title. No chance to speak. The room was silent. Silent like shame. I saw faces I'd helped through divorces, performance breakdowns, even cancer diagnoses, all looking everywhere but at me. I nodded once. It's been a privilege. Then I walked out, Not rushed, not broken, steady. My heels clicked across the tile like punctuation marks. Period, period, period. I didn't cry in the conference room. I waited until the stairwell. And even then the tears weren't for the insult. They were for the ending. 19 years. Erased in a sentence. No one stopped it. But they would feel it. Soon. That night I went home, opened my laptop, and watched the final sequence execute. A few lines of code. Silent, invisible. By Wednesday morning, the unraveling had begun. The first email came at 7:22 a.m. Payroll access error. Can't retrieve employee records. Then a Slack ping from IT. Benefits renewal portal unresponsive. Anyone else seeing this? Then 5 more messages. By lunch, the HRIS system had locked out all admin roles. The employee feedback dashboard defaulted to 2019 templates. Termination flows returned 403 errors. Compliance audit portals vanished altogether. Derek sent a company-wide note. Please be patient as we address a temporary systems bug. But it wasn't a bug. It was a mirror. The systems weren't broken. They just didn't belong to him anymore. Thursday, I got a call. Not from Weston. From Glenridge Medical Systems, the client. Evelyn, the voice said. We had a meeting this morning. Derek didn't have the answers we needed. And he mentioned you were no longer with the company. Pause. Why weren't you there? I smiled. Good question. I hung up, finished my tea, and forwarded every systems error I'd archived to my personal vault. No noise, no social post, no expose, just silence, and the sound of power shifting. 3 weeks after I walked out of Weston and Maddox, I walked into a different room, sleek sunlit, humming with quiet efficiency. This wasn't revenge. It was infrastructure. Caradine Group had reached out before Derek even stepped through Weston's glass doors. They'd admired my retention models, my people-first restructuring during the 2016 market downturn. At the time I said no, out of loyalty. This time I said yes. And I didn't come alone. I brought the systems, the frameworks, and eventually the people Derek had quietly written off. Caradine didn't poach. They absorbed, seamlessly, strategically. While Weston and Maddox flailed through outages and contractor rotations, we moved with clarity. By the time Glenridge Medical Systems issued a quiet RFP to transition their account, we were already in talks. The final twist, Caradine didn't just win the account. We acquired Weston's struggling R&D division, complete with its personnel patents and outstanding client obligations. The integration meeting was held in a familiar conference room, walnut-paneled, circular table, 10 seats. I arrived early. I placed a slim stack of agendas at each seat. Logged into the smartboard, sipped from a mug that simply read, Sustainable, Impressive. And then I heard the door open behind me. Derek. He paused when he saw me. Blink. Evelyn, I turned calm professional. Welcome to the integration alignment session, Mr. Harlan. I trust you've reviewed the briefing packet. He didn't speak at first. His mouth opened then closed again. He looked smaller, like someone who had aged 5 years in 1 quarter. He sat across from me. Not beside, not at the head, across. I led the meeting, introduced each item, outlined the onboarding transition flow, delegated action points, all while Derek sat silent, annotating notes on a packet I had written about a system I had designed inside a structure I now ran. Paige wasn't there. Rumor had it she'd been let go after a data privacy issue. Unauthorized access. What a surprise. About 20 minutes in, Derek finally spoke. Voice low. This is solid work. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He stayed until the end, nodding along. He didn't interrupt. He didn't push back. At one point, he caught my eye and quickly looked away. Afterward, as people filtered out, he lingered. Evelyn, he said, can we talk? I nodded and led him into a side room. No glass, no audience, just us. He didn't sit. He leaned forward, hands bracing the table like it might give out. I didn't see it. What you did. What you held together. I waited. The board gave me 1 quarter to drop operational costs, or I'd be on the line myself. I panicked. I thought you were legacy weight. I tilted my head. Not unkindly. But you didn't ask, did you? He looked down. No. Silence hung like dust. I'm sorry, he added quietly. I believed him. But it didn't matter. Apologies don't uncrash systems. They don't unerase people. I appreciate that, I said. But this isn't about me anymore. It's about what comes next. He nodded. Hollow, worn. The next day I received a call from Caradine's board liaison. Derek would be transitioning out. The language was graceful redeployment opportunities, strategic advisor at a regional satellite office. But we all knew what it meant. Demotion with a parachute. A soft landing far from the decision-making table. Later I heard he accepted the position. A windowless office in Tempe. No assistant, no boardroom. Just a badge and a long list of regrets. I didn't gloat. I didn't post a thing. But I did allow myself one small moment. I reopened the folder where I'd saved Derek's original salary adjustment notice, the one that said I was being corrected. Then I selected it, deleted it, emptied the trash. The system asked, "Are you sure you want to permanently delete this item?" Yes. I was sure. I used to think legacy was something carved into plaques or delivered through tearful retirement speeches. But now I know better. Legacy is quieter. It's in the intern who speaks with confidence because someone finally listened. It's in the middle manager who didn't quit because she had one meeting where she felt heard. It's in the systems that don't crash when someone steps away because they were built to outlast individuals. At Caradine, I never asked for a title. They gave me one anyway, Chief People Officer. But what mattered more were the doors they let me open. I started holding office hours, unofficial ones. No suit required. No agenda. Just a quiet space for the overlooked working moms coming back after caregiving. Mid-career professionals unsure if they still had momentum. Assistants who'd never been told they could lead. I didn't promise them fast tracks. I offered them presence. Because presence once denied to me became the thing I chose to extend. Soon after, we launched a program called Second Bloom, a leadership incubator for women over 40. The idea was simple. Legacy doesn't mean winding down. It means just now blooming fully. I expected a few sign-ups. The cohort filled in 48 hours. One afternoon, a junior associate I'd barely spoken to left a handwritten note on my desk. "Thank you for showing me that being quiet isn't weakness. That experience doesn't expire, that some of us hold things together and we deserve to be seen too." I sat with that note in my hands for a long time. Not proud, not vindicated, just still. Because that was the point. It had never been about proving anyone wrong. It was about creating something that still stands when you're no longer standing in front of it. As for Derek last, I heard he took the field role. No boardroom, no spotlight. Just a desk. Just time. I don't hate him. He's not a villain. He's a lesson. Some people climb by stepping on others. But the ones who last, they build something others can stand on. And that's what I do now. Not out of spite. Out of design. I'm not here to hold power. I'm here to make sure when I let go, it holds.